right, good afternoon, Mr. Francis. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate you letting me come in to observe as well yesterday. So, first of all, let's talk about the last time that we met. Very happy with what I saw. So, we talked a lot about um, when you were teaching that we were seeing some issues with some of the students that were talking over you while you were teaching and that kind of thing. So when I came in, I definitely saw that that was a lot better this last time. Talk to me a little bit about that. What do you think made you successful in just making adjustments to do better there?
So, one of the things that I've always tried to do, just anytime I'm teaching, is just stop talking and stop instruction until they get quiet. And that usually works for the most part, but I've also found that at this age, sometimes just telling them how rude they're being and making them sort of confront that they are being rude sort of reminds them that, it's not just that we're missing out on learning, but they're actually being disrespectful. And I think that sort of comes into the college and career readiness part of this because, like, I don't want them to go to an employer one day and be talking through a meeting and lose their job. So,
Sure.
sort of pointing out what's socially inappropriate sometimes gets them to quiet down faster.
Right.
And I think that generally the rapport between me and them is just increasing over time.
It's positive,
so,
right?
Yeah.
How does that make you feel? Just that, you're able to implement something and it worked, obviously.
It makes me feel good, and it also validates a lot of the training that I had, working on my education degree, where they had us do a lot of things without students in the room, and they promised us that they would work. And it's nice to feel sort of validated by that because those practices that they talked to me so much about, but I didn't necessarily always have the time to practice, in the real world they work, which
Sure.
is really cool. So
That's excellent.
that's a nice thing.
So I came in yesterday, and we did an observation, just a brief informal observation, and I wanted to ask you about your introductory activity. So there was a 10-minute news brief that you do with the kids in the beginning of class. What's the purpose of that activity?
So the purpose first and foremost is to keep them up to date on the world around them and like the current events that are going on. I like the student news because it's 10 minutes every day. It's consistent. They try to keep it as relevant as possible, but also some humor in there so it keeps the kids' attention. And I just think that it's the discussion that follows is a very important thing to me because they spend half their days in the ILC where they're not supposed to be socializing or talking at all. And it's social studies, and government is a very hard and dry subject when you're not discussing it. So whatever we can relate that happen on the news to our course is awesome. But also it's just important because they need to know what's going on in the world around them if I'm trying to actually teach them government and make them educated voters.
Sure. Okay. And what was your objective for the day when I came in to see?
The objective for the day yesterday was to start part one of a Bill of Rights portfolio that I've developed. And part one entails looking at the English Bill of Rights from the 1600s and the American Bill of Rights from the 1700s. And going through each article or amendment and giving it a freedom score. So, like, how important is freedom of speech versus how important is the king not making taxes without Parliament's consent. So, just to get them thinking about what freedoms and protections are important to them, because the following activity is to create their own Bill of Rights, and then the third part of the activity is to examine hypothetical court cases and be the judge and decide those court cases based on the Bill of Rights they created.
Understood. Okay. How long, and so that introductory activity that you had, that 10-minute news brief, how long do you think that lasted?
Yesterday, I think for the class that you came into, it went too long. They talked. We get off topic a lot of times because you get them talking about something and then they have a question, and you don't want to be the teacher who shuts down questions, but sometimes the questions do get us off track.
Sure.
So I say I usually aim for that to not take more than 5 to 10 minutes.
Right.
But there are days where we spend.
And so obviously, and also I wasn't in there for the whole lesson, but what did that do to the pacing of your lesson? Like as you went on to other activities, did it have an effect?
It did, because I would say it gave me sort of less time to make sure everyone was on track.
Sure.
Because once I got them started and I modeled how to give the amendments a freedom score, then I wanted to walk around the room and try to make sure that everybody was understanding what they were doing. And for I think about 3 of the classes it went fine, but there was one period, the one where it ran the longest, where I was kind of feeling like I sent some kids home with homework that they might not have fully grasped. So
Gotcha.
This morning when I saw those kids, I made sure that, hey, do you understand what you're working on this?
Right.
Because it is only part one of a 3-step portfolio.
Okay.
So it wasn't, if it had been like a hard deadline of this needs to be turned in today, like if they were working on part 3,
Yeah.
that would have been a problem. But because it was part one, there was a little wiggle room for making sure that they got it.
Okay.
So
So, what do you think? What are some things that you could do maybe to fix that? Because I think we've identified something here that I want to work on, and that's just making sure that that introductory activity doesn't take too long, so that you can get to the actual meat of the objective for the day. Some things that that you have in mind, maybe that you could do to help.
So one thing that I noticed how was an immediate help, a change that I've already put in, I should say, is that I've been taking attendance while the news is on, as opposed to just getting to attendance at some point during the class period. And that just takes one thing off my plate, and then I know at the end of news we can go right into the discussion, and I'm not going to be distracted by trying to finish up attendance.
Gotcha.
The other thing that I guess I can do is I could physically set a timer to limit the daily news discussion to say 5 to 10 minutes, depending on, I'm hesitant to set the timer every day because sometimes the news is more relevant to government,
Right.
especially with the election going.
Right.
If they're just going to tell me that the climate is changing for 10 minutes, we don't need to spend 10 minutes discussing that. But if
Sure.
they're talking about Donald Trump's press conference and then something with Russia and then something with the Middle East,
Right.
that's all stuff that we're like learning about in government. So
Yeah.
then that's why I'm hesitant about the timer.
Okay. Well, I think you've got it. I think we can set a really concrete goal here. What I would think would be a productive measure to try to do for the next time that I come in would be to try to use that timer, and then we can evaluate after that. But what I'd like to set as a goal for you is to just set a timer for that introductory activity, especially to just be 15 minutes. Because I want them to obviously be able to watch the news, but I do want you to have that follow-up discussion and questions. So I don't want it to just be 10 minutes where they're just watching and then you move on with no follow-up. But let's set it for 15 minutes and just see how that goes. See if you can incorporate everything you need to in that time. Have the students talk with each other, have them speak with you, and we'll go from there.
And it would probably be best to start at 5 minutes of discussion and add more time if necessary, as opposed to start it at 10 minutes and try to back down.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, so we'll try. And we'll try the 15, and then we'll talk after that. We'll meet again and figure out if that was something that would work. But I think that'll help you get to the meat of your objective for the day. When's a good time for me to come back in and see this?
You can try tomorrow. We'll be on hopefully part 2 of this portfolio by then, which is again the create your own Bill of Rights part. So it's much more of their own small groups to talk about. Hey, what are you going to include? Did you see anything on the English Bill of Rights or the U.S. Bill of Rights that you're going to adopt? I'd like to give them time tomorrow to talk about that in small groups, and then have them work quietly and independently to actually create their Bill of Rights. So
Okay.
tomorrow should work.
All right. Does first period tomorrow work
Yeah.
well? Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Excellent. So I'll come in at about 8:45 tomorrow morning, and we'll take a look at this. Okay.
Okay.
All
Cool.
right, sir. Thanks a lot.